So today I am going to do my labor and delivery story. I actually turned 6 weeks postpartum yesterday, so it's been a little bit obviously since I haven't really had a chance to really do it. So let's just get into it. So I was overdue. I turned 41 weeks, and I guess we'll just start with like the day I turned 41 weeks. So we tried a lot of stuff to actually induce labor this time, like we've never tried before. So nothing worked, but I actually tried castor oil, which I never thought I would do. So Sunday, the day I turned 41 weeks, was the first time I tried it, and I did like half the bottle, which is like the most you could do a day, I guess, or at least the size I got. I don't know if there's different sizes, but I tried that, and I've tried it twice. So Sunday I tried it around like 1 p.m. and then I actually started getting contractions, consistent contractions for a good couple hours at around like 5 p.m. or so, 6 p.m. And then they kind of just petered out. And then Monday I tried the rest of the bottle, and again I did it at 1 p.m. and the contractions started about the same time, but they were longer, or I mean they lasted longer at least than the day before, but then during the night at some point they just stopped. So that was where we were at. So I knew I could have contractions, and I had been having them on and off, but for me in the beginning, I really don't feel the contractions to where they're like painful or anything like that for a while. So I knew I was having some, but they were inconsistent, besides the castor oil that made them consistent. So we ended up being induced the following day at Tuesday night. We went in, and we went in at 9 p.m. I think, yeah, 9 p.m. So we didn't actually start our induction until 11 p.m. and we just went straight to Pitocin, because I've had, if you don't know, my first pregnancy, I've been induced all times, every time. So this time, since we were just overdue, we ended up being induced, and just in the end it turned out to be the best thing. So not that I wanted to be induced at all, but anyway, so with our first I was induced, and I ended up having a C-section because I stalled out, and it was just my water had been broken, and it just, for safety reasons, I chose to have a C-section because I was not getting any further than like 5 centimeters. And then our second one I was induced, and our first she was born at 37 and 2 days. Our second daughter, she was induced as well, but she was born on her due date. Our second one ended up being a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after cesarean. So this time I was trying that as well, and until it's achieved, it's called a TOLAC, which is a trial of labor after cesarean. So even though I already had a VBAC, it's still going to be considered another VBAC. So we were trying to do that again, and we were successful in the end. So yeah, but since we had already done a C-section the first time, whenever you have, or you're trying for a VBAC, you can only do so many different things to induce labor. And since I was already a couple centimeters dilated, this time I was closer to a 3. With Karina, I was a 2 when I went in, I believe. So we did a, not a Foley bulb exactly, but a Cook catheter, which is kind of like a Foley bulb. But this time, since I was closer to a 3, we didn't do that because they said I would probably just end up being on Pitocin anyway. So the long story short, we started with Pitocin, and that was it. So I started having contractions right away, and they weren't painful or anything, but you know, I could tell that they were contractions. But Yeah, so I had them from 11 p.m. and then we just kind of kept going throughout the day. On Wednesday, you know, we just kind of kept bumping it up every now and then, but not, it wasn't actually pushed all the way up at the end, like all the way, like the other two girls were, so thankfully. But from 11 p.m. until like 6:30, I think 6, I was doing it unmedicated because I had really wanted to try to deliver without medication if I could. But I know, I'm pretty sure, at least I tell myself this, that if I wasn't induced, I could probably do it. But by that point, they were so strong and not giving me any break. I ended up having a epidural, and pretty much before that, nothing really happened. I take that back. We did break my water, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. But other than the water breaking and what happened with that, nothing really happened besides the midwife telling me that I couldn't really be in labor because I was smiling and laughing, which I did not like her. She's like the only midwife I've never not liked. But thankfully, I ended up delivering at night, and I liked the night nurse because I had her when I started my induction and she was great. But anyway, so I ended up having the epidural, but let me back up to whenever they broke my water, and I want to say it was like around maybe 4 or so. I should have wrote this stuff down, but I just didn't. So they broke my water, and immediately they're like, oh, it's green. So that worried me because I've never had it happen. So she actually pooped while in the water still. And I just asked them what that meant. Like, I knew what it meant. Like, I knew she had her first bowel movement in there. But for delivery purposes, because I had wanted to do immediate skin to skin and everything like that. So they told me that basically the pediatric team would just be in there, so it would be just a lot more, you know, a lot more people in the room with us instead of just a few, like doctor, nurses, and people and the corpsmen, since I was delivering on base. So I was like, okay. Once I got my epidural, I was able to relax, and because before that it was pretty painful to where I was screaming into my pillow just so I wasn't like that crazy pregnant person that was screaming and everyone could hear me. I'm sure people could hear me, probably. I don't know. But yeah, so I tried as long as I could, so I'm just happy with that. But I don't know how dilated I was whenever they gave me the epidural. I can't remember, but maybe around, I think I was around a 6. And I had been that way for a good couple hours. And since I had been that way, the doctor that I was given, I don't know if I think I told it in my last pregnancy update or one of them, but the OB doctor I had been seeing the whole pregnancy that wanted to be there got deployed a week before my due date. All of a sudden, like he called me and told me it was a possibility, and then he was deployed the next day. So that was a surprise to everybody. But then the doctor that I saw for my next appointment, I had seen in the beginning of my pregnancy twice, but not for like anything OB related. I was just like sick, and my other doctor wasn't actually available. So I knew him, and if I had delivered during the day, you know, during the week, he would be there since he would be actually at work. And he told me at my follow-up appointment that he had been watching me throughout the day, like hoping I would actually be close to being delivered so he could be there. But he was kind of worried that since I was just stuck at 6 for a while, that he was worried that they would try and push a C-section on me, even though this hospital has been really great and not pushing it on me at all to go back to another C-section or anything. But he was just worried that with the time frame and then, you know, my water being broken and stuff like that, those factors. But it ended up not happening, thankfully, with the epidural. I did progress. So from like 6:30, like the anesthesiologist came in, like I feel it was like within 5-10 minutes, because I'm pretty sure I was really the only one up there at that time. Like there was one other pregnant person, I think, up there in labor, maybe, at that time. But he got there really quick. He was funny, and it mostly it worked, and except where the contractions were, like in my lower stomach, I could feel them like still for a good 30 minutes afterwards. So I had to push the button a couple of times and give it time to do, but like everything else was numb. But then that took a little bit, but it ended up working. So I was able to progress from like 6:30 to like 9:15ish at night. And that's when I felt like I had to use the bathroom. And that urge wasn't as strong as it was with Karina. But I told my nurse, and I was like, I think, I have to go, and that feeling. And she's like, okay, so we'll check you in just a minute, because she was doing like some vitals and stuff. So they got the 2 interning doctors, because the base that I go to, it is a teaching base. I don't know how you say it. So they had been with me throughout the day or the night, because they were the team for the nighttime. But so they had been there whenever I was first induced. And the male one checked me, and because I didn't think I would be maybe as progressed as I was, but he checked me, and he just kind of turned to the lady and or the female doctor, not just the lady, but he was like, yeah. And I don't remember if she checked me or not, to like just go behind him and see, but they were basically like, okay, you're at a +1, which I don't think I was ever that progressed with Karina whenever it was time to push. I don't know, they never told me, but I don't think I was like that progressed with her. So I was like, okay. And they're like, so are you ready to have a baby? And I was like, sure, of course. But they were like, let's try a couple practice pushes. And so I did, I think 1, I don't think I did 2. I think I did just 1. And they're like, okay, stop. Whenever you're pushing, you're at a +2. So they're like, it's gonna be baby time. So they called the doctor, my doctor that had been seen that week of, he would have been there, because he said he would have come in, but this all happened so fast they wouldn't have time to have called him basically and get him to deliver me. So, because it all happened within 5 minutes of me pushing and her being delivered. So all of a sudden there was like so many people in the room, and I heard a nurse, I don't know who she was, but I heard a nurse on the phone with somebody and was like, okay, she's ready to push. And I could hear them, because I think she had it on speaker, and they're like, are you sure she's ready? And I think, yes, she is ready to go. So this was the fastest delivery part for me ever. But yeah, so we started pushing, and it took 5 minutes. So I started pushing, and I got a couple pushes in, I don't know how many, and the interning male doctor was delivering me at that point with like the on-call doctor next to him. And then all of a sudden they just said, stop pushing, and the attending doctor like pretty much pushed the other one out of the way, because Mia got stuck. And so he told me to quit pushing, and that he was going to use the vacuum. And in my mind, I was actually picturing like a little vacuum type thing, like I'd never seen one before. But so he had to get that to get her out. because she was stuck. And Eric told me that between the time I had stopped pushing and the doctor getting the vacuum out, or vacuum to get her out, that he could like physically see her start to turn. So she got delivered with the vacuum, and they told us, or not, they didn't tell us. They started calling a code purple, and I had just learned what that was the day before. And sorry, I didn't even like tell, only a few people know this anyway, but a code purple at our hospital, I know it can be different at different hospitals, but ours is like cardiac arrest in an infant, or basically like a stillbirth. So she was, they didn't call it over the intercom, I don't believe, but they had started calling it code purple because she was lifeless for like at least 30 seconds or so whenever she was born. And once they started calling that, like, since I had just learned what that was and Eric knew what it was, like, he was just trying to calm me down because I was just kind of in shock. And just, you know, praying that she was okay. And I couldn't see her because of like the angle I was at. And so they finally got her to cry, which was like the best noise ever. It was a scary moment. Like, it was the fastest delivery, but it was the scariest delivery in the end with that happening. And that right there, even though we said 3 was our max, that right there was like, you know, the icing on top of we're not having more kids, because I don't even want that to be another possibility of that kind of a birth. You know, so sorry. She, you know, finally cried. They finally were able to get her breathing and everything. Thank God. I don't know what I would have done otherwise. But I didn't get to hold her for like 30 minutes because of, you know, because of that. And then they actually thought that she had broken her left clavicle during delivery, because the doctor, you know, said he heard it pop. And we thought for like a whole day that it was her clavicle. And they did an x-ray and everything. And then the whole time we were there, we just had to be careful. And then upon being discharged, the doctor that actually delivered Aria is still there, and he came in and he told me that it wasn't her clavicle at all. It was not broken. And guess whoever had taken the x-ray that night, hey honey, I have a little helper now, but he said whoever had taken the x-ray that night, there probably wasn't a actual radiologist during the night. So him and the radiologist looked it over again, thankfully, and they didn't see a break. So, you know, she was good on that. And this part kind of goes off of that, but like a week later, I ended up going back in because every time we touched her left arm, she would scream in pain, even if we were just like lightly touching it. She wasn't moving it, and in the end, it turns out that her left arm around like this area was broken, and that happened during the delivery. Since whenever they took the original x-ray that night, they had her arm up like this, flexing, and since she was so chunky, her arm rolls kind of covered it, and it was like you could, if you were looking for it, you could barely see it, but her rolls were kind of covering it just perfectly. So she did in fact have a broken arm. And they just told us we could either put it in a long sleeve onesie and kind of pin it at a 90-degree angle to heal, or we could just keep it straight and swaddle her. And I chose to do that because I put her through a long sleeve onesie one time, and that was the most painful thing, to hear her cry. And so she was just naked, basically swaddled the whole time for like a week and a half everywhere we went. And just since they are so young and, you know, newly born, the doctors were saying that they're just so resilient at that age that it'll heal on its own. And a couple weeks ago we went back and had another x-ray, and it's almost all the way healed, but not completely. But there's tissue around it now that her body created to help protect it and let it heal better. And she can actually move her arm, and it doesn't hurt her at all to move it. So thank God for that, because that was terrifying, just to know that your newborn is broken. But yeah, so going from 2 to 3 kids wasn't bad, but it was just hard, especially in the first couple weeks because of that, and trying to get the girls to understand that, you know, Mia has a broken arm and you can't touch her on that side, and be super, super careful with her, like even more than you would be with a newborn, I guess. But that's just kind of the extension of that part. But so I didn't tell you how much she weighed or anything yet. So this was a surprise. Oops. But she was 9 pounds and 11 ounces and 21 inches long. So just to give you a little backstory, she was 7'14" on her due date. Ari was 7'4" at 37 weeks. And at 41 weeks and 3 days is when she was born. She was 9'11". So we were not expecting that at all. And I will say the 2 interning doctors, before they broke my water, ooh, you're shaking it, they came in and felt my stomach, and they were trying to guess. And no one told me the whole pregnancy. No one said anything about the weight. Like, they told me with the other 2 kind of like a guesstimate, because it could be off a little bit, you know. But they're just feeling it, and you know, with my water intact still, sorry. And we're just like, oh, she'll be a good sized baby. And I was just thinking, okay, that's like 8 pounds. Because once they broke my water, I was so small, it did not look like there was going to be an almost 10-pound baby in there. So whenever she came out, the attending doctor that did end up delivering me was guessing her weight in grams, and he was off by like 100, and that's it. And I was just like, wow. But everyone was so amazed that she was that chunky. Pretty sure no one could have been more surprised than me and Eric. But the great part, minus the whole how the delivery went, was I did not tear at all, which thank God, because oh, knowing that, I'm so glad I had an epidural. But knowing her weight now, I'm so glad I had an epidural, because feeling a 9-pound baby, almost 10 pounds, come out, I don't know how I could deal with that. But yeah, so she was super chunky, but it didn't tear. I did have like a little scratch on me. I don't know if that's like from when she was coming out and how she came out and, like, you know, broke her arm and everything, maybe. But it was, I don't know if he said a perennial tear, not tear, scratch. While they were checking Mia the whole time and making sure she was okay and breathing, you know, fine and everything, I was still laying like I was delivering, basically for a while, because of that little scratch. And you know, it was tiny enough to where I didn't need any stitches, but it just kind of kept bleeding. So my nurse was worried about it and like wanted to be cautious about it. So she brought the doctor back in like 2 times. And we were just kind of, I don't know, watching it. And by this time, the anesthesia had worn off, and he ended up having to go in. I mean, this might be TMI, but it's a delivery story. But he had to go in. I could feel him do everything, basically, because no anesthesia by this point. And he was just checking to make sure I wasn't having any blood clots or anything like that. And I think he got like 1 or 2 out, but he just wanted to be cautious about that. But that, I jumped so high out of that bed when he did that check because it was painful. And hold on, honey. Yeah, but after that he ended up getting an ultrasound just to double check that there was no more, and there wasn't. That's pretty much the whole labor and delivery story. I know I kind of jumped around here and there. I should have wrote it all down, like, to do in order, but whatever. It's just mommy brain right now. But yeah, so the most important thing is she's here and she's healthy, and you know, thank God for that, because that was a crazy delivery part for me. But she's healthy now, and as I said at the beginning, she just turned 6 weeks yesterday. We haven't weighed her since she was 4 weeks, and she was already 11 pounds and 6 ounces at 4 weeks, so she likes to eat, so I'm sure she's gaining her weight. She like lost only a couple ounces in the hospital. Unlike the girls, she packed on fast. You know, they took a little bit of time, and she's doing great. So we'll have our next checkup at 2 months, you know, in a couple weeks, which is crazy. It's gone by fast, but I'm sorry it took me a while to actually get this going, because it's honestly taken me a little bit of time to adjust. Again, it's not been like bad at all. The girls adore her so much, but just in the beginning with her arm, and then, you know, just trying to get used to having 3 kids and, you know, doing stuff around the house, and Eric helps me out so much with that. Just trying to get into a routine that I'm, you know, just focusing on our family. So yeah, I'm just glad to finally film this. So that is really it. I don't think I left anything out that I major, you know, that I could think of. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this. And if you are pregnant, I mean, this does not happen to everybody. This is the only time it happened to me out of 3 deliveries. I mean, each pregnancy and labor and delivery is going to be different, obviously. So just keep that in mind. And I don't want it to scare anybody, but it's just, it is life, and it's just one of those situations that can happen, you know, I don't know. I mean, each labor has been different for me. So I hope you enjoy this video, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.